And away we go. Episode 1144 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Friday, August 29th, 2025, and perhaps the best defensive player in the NFC East now is gone from the NFC East. Shocking NFL news on Thursday evening. The Dallas Cowboys trading edge defender Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers for interior defensive lineman Kenny Clark and first-round picks in the 2026 and 2027 NFL drafts. Wow. That escalated quickly. Parsons had been in the midst of contract extension negotiations with the Cowboys. Those negotiations were not going well, leading him to request to be traded. Sound familiar? It never felt like the Cowboys were going to trade Parsons, and then, like on a dime, the Cowboys end up trading Parsons. The situation, instead of getting resolved via a contract extension, results in Micah Parsons now being gone from the Cowboys and gone from the NFC East. If you are a Commanders fan, no more worrying about Micah Parsons being on the Cowboys, although the Commanders are at the Packers on Thursday Night Football on September 11th. But Micah Parsons gone from the NFC East.
How about them Cowboys? Yeah!
Exactly. More wonderful asset management by the Cowboys, as Jimmy Johnson famously said during his time as Cowboys head coach. How about them Cowboys? Hello and welcome to this Friday installment of the Al Galdi podcast. Unlike the Cowboys, the Commanders resolved their major contract extension dispute of the last few months. The team this past Tuesday afternoon announced having signed receiver Terry McLaurin to a contract extension. Coming up on the show, high-level intel on the negotiations, the terms of the extension, the reporting of the terms of the extension, and more, as we'll speak with Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standing on Substack. Ben has a lot of good info and insight on the Terry McLaurin saga. We'll also get Ben's outlook for the Commanders at running back and get into the current state of sports media with independent media like his Substack and, dare I say, like this podcast, taking it to traditional media. And before our chat with Ben, next segment, Commanders conversation off comments from head coach Dan Quinn on Thursday afternoon on how quickly the Jayden Daniels-Terry McLaurin QB1-WR1 chemistry can be back in full effect, the likely regression for the team in terms of fourth down efficiency, and more. Also on the show, college football, the season debut of GaldiLocks, my picks for the FBS teams of the Mid-Atlantic region. All 7 of those teams have season openers this coming weekend. And during the segment, we'll discuss the state of Maryland football as head coach Mike Locksley would appear to be on a rather warm seat. And on the show, we'll talk Orioles. They concluded a 1-7 homestand with a 3-2 loss to the Boston Red Sox at Oriole Park at Camden Yards on Thursday afternoon to complete a 4-game sweep, during which the O's totaled a mere 7 runs. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Feedback on the Commander signing Terry McLaurin to a contract extension. Email from Jason Chestnut Jr. The subject of the email, in all caps, Hail Terry Forever. Writes Jason, hey Al, emailing you again to celebrate the re-signing of our guy Terry. I grew up watching this team, and my earliest memory is the days of RG3. After the days of RG3, and you know who, there was a span of time where I slowly started losing interest in the team because of how bad we were. I was always made fun of at school for being a Redskins fan. I got so many Redskins/Deadskins jokes all of the time whenever I wore my Chris Cooley jersey. But in 2019, I noticed a guy wearing 17. He instantly recaptured my attention for the team. Then I saw Steven Sims do his muffed punt return touchdown and Kelvin Harmon have a few big catches. Then Dwayne Haskins came and went RIP, and then we were on to the rest of the quarterback carousel. But no matter what, our guy Terry McLaurin never complained and always produced. Terry is my favorite player ever and my favorite thing to watch on Sundays. So to hear him sound off in that Eastern Motors interview and talk the way that he did was worrying me. I love Jayden Daniels so much. He's like the final boss version of my childhood hero, RG3. But I couldn't even look at this team the same while all of this drama was happening. And to be honest, I didn't. I stopped looking at Commanders news and stuff like that because I would get too frustrated with the Terry situation. Once the news broke the other day, my dad and I had just finished listening to your pod at work, and I could not have been more happy. Now our guy Terry can retire a Redskin like he was always supposed to, and now some of the Washington fans can go back to crying about the name. Thanks again, Al, for all that you do. My father, Jason Sr., and I have been listening to you since the radio days. Hashtag raise hail. Hashtag hail Terry. Thank you very much for the email, Jason. There is an emotional connection that Terry McLaurin has with Washington fans, and that is such a special thing. So few Washington players have had such a connection since the Redskins' glory days of the 1980s and early 1990s, but McLaurin is one of those players, and that's about who he is as a player and a person. Email from Wendell Hicks, writes Wendell. Hey Al, I hope that all is well. I am so glad that we have finally made it to the college football season with the NFL just behind. It was really great to see that Terry McLaurin got his contract situation resolved and that he will be here for at least a few more years. Did the team offer something extremely low and have to come up significantly? Because having a months-long negotiation end up where most thought this would end up before questions of age became public just seems like this was a pointless dance and sacrificed valuable continuity for nothing. I'm looking forward to riding with you this football season because I truly can't follow all of these teams. Thank you for the email, Wendell. Yes, the Al Galdi podcast, we follow Washington, D.C. area sports so that you don't have to. It's a simple arrangement. Stay tuned for a conversation with Ben Standig because I will ask him point blank about the starting point for each side in the Terry McLaurin contract extension negotiations. What did the team initially offer? What did McLaurin initially ask for? You're going to get those answers. And if you enjoy this podcast, check out BGO Blind Pig, the official podcast of BGObsession.com. BGO Blind Pig is great. It is a roundtable discussion of the Commanders. It's like you and a bunch of your buddies who are Commanders fans are hanging out and talking about the team. The conversation is smart and fun and respectful. You can find the BGO Blind Pig podcast on YouTube and on any major podcast provider. Next time you're on YouTube, just search BGO Blind Pig podcast and see what you think. Make BGObsession.com the home for your burgundy and gold obsession, and make the BGO Blind Pig podcast part of your Commanders podcast rotation. Well, the Commanders on Thursday morning announced having signed running back Donovan Edwards and cornerback Darius Rush to the practice squad. So the team now has 16 players on the practice squad. Edwards and Rush are the only two Commanders practice squad players who were not released by the team in its cut down to 53. The Commanders practiced on Thursday afternoon. The players do have the next 3 days off, Friday through Sunday. And then Monday, the work week begins for the team's 2025 regular season opener. Commanders versus the New York Giants at Northwest Stadium on Sunday afternoon, September 7th at 1. Receiver Terry McLaurin, the team on Tuesday afternoon announced having signed him to a contract extension. He on Wednesday afternoon practiced for the first time since the start of training camp. And by the way, he on Wednesday afternoon did participate in team drills, so that ankle that supposedly was why he had not been practicing did seem to be just fine. But what about McLaurin being good to go for week one? And what about him for week one being at a point at which he and Jayden Daniels can hit the ground running as a high-level QB1-WR1 combo? Commanders head coach Dan Quinn did a pre-practice press conference early Thursday afternoon. We, during that presser, had this back and forth between Commanders insider John Keim of ESPN and Quinn.
With Terry and Jayden, like, how much are they able that they're doing to just maybe get that connection back? What are some of the little things they're doing to regain that?
Yeah, I think more of it just, time on task, John, honestly, to say, do they have experience together? Yes. Banked reps? Yes. But still, like yesterday, we ran a deep play action, that was over to Terry. That was like good route that you'd seen before. So now it's, hey, let's work this one some more, this one a little bit more. So Jayden's excellent with that, to work a specific route with a specific player on some things. And so that's what you'll see more with him and Terry, extras, earlies, this specific route, this timing, because it's not all the same for every player. And so that's kind of the challenge of it, from a quarterback and a receiver, not the playing zone where you're, back facing the quarterback, but, deep overs, comebacks, the timing of it. So that's what they'll continue to work through.
Obviously, they're both very good players, right? But together, they, the connection, the red zone, all that. Is there something else about how they are, how they operate, besides just being good, that allows them to have a certain connection?
Yeah, I would say the complementary reason that comes to mind first, I would think, John, is one's an exceptional deep ball ability to go track it, and the other's exceptionally throwing it. So I think maybe there's, I've never really thought of it in that way, but there's probably some complementary football that goes to one another. So here's a guy that can really go and get on top of people and catch it over different shoulders on a deep ball, and a quarterback who's got the touch to do it. So I think that's probably the biggest complementary piece, of their games, that they're able to, support one another on two of the things that they both do really well.
The NFC East is stacked with high-level QB1-WR1 combos. The Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. The Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott and C.D. Lamb. The New York Giants, Russell Wilson and Malik Neighbors. Wilson is not a high-level quarterback anymore, but Neighbors is really good. I would, however, take Jayden Daniels-Terry McLaurin over those other three combos. So the Commanders will play their first two games of the 2025 regular season over just 5 days. Week 1, home to the New York Giants on Sunday afternoon, September 7th at 1. Week 2 at the Green Bay Packers on Thursday Night Football on September 11th at 8:15. The start to the Commanders' 2025 regular season is going to be a whirlwind. And so the team already has begun preparing for the Packers. So we on Thursday afternoon had this exchange between David Aldridge of The Athletic and Dan Quinn.
Next week, with the schedule, how much Packers do you put in next week along with the Giants, given that you got a short schedule the following week?
The coaches really had to be the ones to put it in over the weekend, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So while Adam and I were busy with that, they really dug in on Green Bay. And so that way, when they could then, as the week went on, then it kind of shifted. But having a Thursday game is challenging. Having a Thursday game at week 2 is better than week 7, because having, I don't know if the term would be exactly right, like a preseason bye, how we've changed the schedule. So this window allows flexibility. I'm sure some teams are just doing, 2 weeks on the opponent they're playing in the opener. But with that Thursday, there is some windows that the coaches aren't with the players, and they had Sunday off. I met with them by myself Monday. The players then had off Tuesday to begin practice Wednesday. So there was some pockets that they were able to do that. And then you have to shut the folders and put that in the drawer, and it doesn't come back out again until that Monday. But it did help.
So I found that from Dan Quinn to be interesting, that the team is better off having the quick turnaround for a Thursday night game in week 2 than later in the season, because the coaching staff has been able to use the downtime between the preseason finale and the regular season opener to begin preparing for the Packers. I like that the NFL now has this week of no games between the final preseason week and the first regular season week. That did not start being the case until 2021, but that was a good change. Another interesting item from Dan Quinn's pre-practice press conference on Thursday afternoon was about fourth down efficiency. The Commanders for the 2024 regular season were number 1 in the NFL in fourth down efficiency, 87%, 20 for 23, absurd efficiency. And it wasn't just that. If you go by the DVOA metric, the Commanders offense for the 2024 regular season had a fourth down DVOA of 91%, which is unbelievable. The team in the 2024 regular season had one of the best fourth down offenses in NFL history. We on Thursday afternoon had this exchange between Adam Kilgore of the Washington Post and Dan Quinn.
It did. Fourth down success last year was such a big part of the team story.
Right.
Like history and like just probability would say it's very difficult to duplicate 87% success rate on fourth down.
Agreed.
How do you approach that? The idea that you're chasing that, but it's also probably not something you can like count on.
Yeah,
achieving again.
It's not all one. Going into the game, sometimes it's I want to make sure we're stealing another possession. So there's some strategy going on with that. It's about like 9 drives or so a game as you're going through it. And so how do we gain an advantage on somebody? Sometimes going for it on 4th does that. Where's the kicker, comfort level to go into that space? And then it's really by the distance. You look at the opponent, where do they fall on the end ones? How about in 2s? Where do they play on the 3s and 4s? If it's a certain style, maybe you're more apt to know what you're going to expect. But, Jayden was a big factor, in that 87% or whatever the number was. There was a handful for sure that was called one thing, and then something happened and like he made the rest go down. Like we don't have a play called that. You don't want to count on that. That's a reactive way of the ball player doing his thing, but you don't want to lean into that. I think that's irresponsible. You want to make sure, hey, this is what we think we're going to do, how we're going to go down. But really by game is we make those decisions as much as we can before the game. So going in, the coordinators know what to expect, how we're going to do it. And then as the game unfolds, I'll communicate with them, where we're at. But I think the secret for me telling the coordinators is early in the drive. So no one's ever caught off guard. Hey, we're going to go for it here, because it can impact some of your 3rd down calls if it's into 4th down, knowing that you may have 2 downs.
And what I so liked about that answer from Dan Quinn was that he acknowledged that regression for the team's 4th down offense is likely. He did not get defensive about the potential for regression. He did not start spewing coaching cliches in response to being asked about the potential for regression. He addressed the potential for regression and the team's success on 4th down last season in an intelligent, enlightened way. Good for him. I do think that the team, because it has Jayden Daniels, still will be really good on 4th downs, but 87% good, 91% DVOA good. Yeah, that's probably not happening. I know that many of you run your own businesses, and so I want to tell you about Square. Square is an all-in-one business partner that makes your day-to-day easier. Square offers tools for every part of your business, from point-of-sale systems and payments to inventory and customer tools. Square brings everything together in one simple platform so you can stay organized, sell anywhere, and keep things moving. Square is easy to use. If you're not technology savvy, no problem. The software is incredibly straightforward and intuitive. You don't need special training. You can just set up Square and start taking payments quickly. Square is flexible. It adjusts to what you need. With Square, you choose the tools that you need and you use them when you want. No long-term contracts required. You can sell in person or online from one location or several. Square is built to move with you and adapt as your business grows. Square keeps up so you don't have to slow down. Get everything you need to run and grow your business without any long-term commitments. And here's a great deal. You can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/Galdi. That's SQUARE.com/GO/GALDI. You can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/Galdi. Run your business smarter with Square. Get started today. Hey, football season is underway. Labor Day weekend is this weekend. Fall grilling season is coming. Now is a great time to get yourself or someone who you care about Omaha Steaks. And here's a great deal for listeners of the Al Galdi podcast. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during Omaha Steaks' Labor Day sale. And for an extra $35 off, use the promo code ALGALDI at checkout. I cannot say enough good things about Omaha Steaks. The food is delicious. Our family loves, yes, the steaks, but also the chicken, the hamburgers, the hot dogs. My 8-year-old son cannot get enough of Omaha Steaks' hot dogs. My wife loves Omaha Steaks' caramel apple tartlets. Omaha Steaks offers unrivaled quality and variety. Every bite is backed by a 100% guarantee. Every steak is perfectly aged to maximize tenderness, and every steak is hand-cut by Masters Butchers in America's heartland. Omaha Steaks is a family-owned company that has been America's original butcher since 1917. Treat yourself and your family or someone who you care about to Omaha Steaks and take advantage of the great deal for listeners of the Al Galdi podcast. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during Omaha Steaks' Labor Day sale. And for an extra $35 off, use the promo code Al Galdi at checkout. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $35 off with the promo code Al Galdi at checkout. See site for details. It has been a news-filled week for the Commanders. Last Sunday afternoon, the team announced having traded running back Brian Robinson Jr. to the San Francisco 49ers for a 6th-round pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. Monday morning, we had the breaking news of the team having agreed with receiver Terry McLaurin on a contract extension. Tuesday afternoon, we had the team announcing having signed McLaurin to the contract extension. Monday and Tuesday, we had the team conducting its Cutdown To 53, the setting of the initial 53-man roster for the 2025 season. Wednesday, we had the team constructing its practice squad. Wednesday afternoon, we had a joint press conference for General Manager Adam Peters and head coach Dan Quinn. Wednesday evening, we had a press conference for Terry McLaurin. A lot has happened as the Commanders' 2025 regular season opener is a week from Sunday. Commanders versus the New York Giants at Northwest Stadium on Sunday afternoon, September 7th at 1. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the Al Galdi podcast Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standig on Substack. You could read his work at lastmanstandig.substack.com. Ben is killing it with his Substack, more than 2,000 subscribers. He also is the host of the Last Man Standig podcast. You could follow Ben on X at Ben Standig. The last time that we spoke was on the episode of the podcast for the day on which you announced the Substack. So we publicly have not yet talked about this, but congratulations, man. Awesome to see your Substack doing so well.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. It's been about a month. It feels like it's been about a year. Not in a bad way. Just there's been so much going on, combined with like to start a new business basically at the exact moment that the team you're covering is open camp, at the moment that the star receiver decides to hold out, etc. Like it's been a lot, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and the support's been great.
So I, on the podcast in late March and early April, talked about being a Washington, D.C. area sports fan today versus being a D.C. area sports fan in the pre-internet age in terms of content, put aside how teams were doing. The overall sports fan experience of today is a lot better than the overall sports fan experience of yesteryear in terms of content and information, in terms of availability. But there was a charm to being a sports fan in the pre-internet age, especially in this area with the sportscasters for the local over-the-air television stations being truly big deals. We had Glenn Brenner at WUSA 9, the CBS affiliate. We had George Michael at NBC4. We had Frank Herzog, the then radio voice of the Redskins at ABC 7. We had Steve Buckhantz at Fox 5. So many people back in the day got their sports news from television sportscasts and from watching SportsCenter on ESPN and from reading the Washington Post. And things, of course, are so different now. Not necessarily, though, in a bad way. But I ask you, as someone who, like me, grew up in this area, does Ben Standig prefer the content avalanche of today or the simplicity of yesteryear?
Well, probably the yesteryear, but that may just be my nostalgia for childhood and when and my pure fandom and things like that. I mean, you could not tear me away from getting, when the Washington Post would show up, or if I was out of town, the USA Today. Every time my family would typically have like family dinners on Sundays. So needless to say, I was not necessarily because of a Redskins game, but just whatever was on in sports, I was constantly the guy who was like, hey, I'm going to leave the table and go find the TV somewhere and like get yelled at by the various adults and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I do miss like that part of it where it was you had to go seek it out, you had to go find it, and now it is just everywhere. Of course, now doing what I do, I find that I'm like 2 days or a day and a half ahead of my friends, like at all times. Like by the time they get to something, like I've already read it, thought about it, discussed it, and moved on because the immediacy of social media with that. So yeah, I do miss it. But like, on the other hand, once the internet happened, but I think really for a lot of us, once Twitter happened, I think it really flattened out the access part of this. It used to be, if you were competing against the Washington Post, say on the beat, good luck. I mean, I grew up here. I'd never read anybody who besides whoever was writing at the Post for the most part, and those people weren't. The other people weren't even on like the radio or anything. So it has definitely changed. But yeah, I do miss the old days where it was a lot more simple. And also, we were all sort of reading the same stuff. We were all sort of connected in that way. And two, and I hate to say this because I don't want to be overly political, but like for example, like with the Brian Robinson thing, that obviously I had something I was part of. Like I was reading the analysis of it from like various blogs, and my God, it was so off in some cases. Again, I'm not to say that like I had all the answers, but like just the interpretation of stuff. But because it's presented at the same level as something I write or something the Post might write or you might say, it's like it gets very confusing for people out there, I think, because they see one thing and they think, oh, this must be real. I'm reading it. It must be a real thing. No, it's not. And so it is a double-edged sword at times. And yeah, maybe I do miss the old days, but a little bit, but.
There's so much content now, but there's so much content now. It's not all of equal quality. And so there is an onus on the consumer to differentiate between that which is good and that which is not so good. But yeah, I've wondered what a George Michael or a Glenn Brenner would be doing in today's sports media environment.
Did you, I don't know, I assume, did you have to do internships when you were coming out of college or in college or whatever, I don't know, at radio stations or whatever?
Yeah, I was a promotions intern at Sports Talk 980 in the summer of 1998, and then was a broadcasting intern there in the summer of 99. That's how I got started at 980.
I did as well. I did the school newspaper bit. I interned at the Baltimore Sun my last year of college. It wasn't that exciting for me, but it was. I did that and did some other things. And I interned at Channel 5 100 years ago when Steve Buckhantz was the lead guy. And that is how you had to figure this out. Like you had to start off sort of at the bottom rung. And then even if you did get hired by some places, you weren't given the prime job day one. You were given the bottom job or, whatever. And you had to continue working your way up. And now in this age of the bloggers and the internet, like people want to go from I'm just sitting on my couch to I want to cover the football team. And not only do I want to, I demand to. I really should be out there. And I'm like, no, this is an actual job. I understand it's sports, and therefore we all talk about it. Anybody can talk about sports. Anybody could predict who's going to win week 1 between the Commanders and Giants, and you got a 50-50 shot of being right, essentially. That doesn't mean you actually not only know anything from a pure, like, analyst standpoint, but also, like, just how the job works, how to interpret what people are saying. When you get information, do you run with it immediately? Do you wait? Do you never say anything because it might, whatever, burn a bridge or it's not necessary? Like, how do you do the job? So many people just want to be around the team. And also, by the way, the separation of fandom, like, the no cheering in the press box, it's a real thing. That's not a joke. Like, it takes seriously. The once in a blue moon you hear something like that, you're like, it is very odd and off-putting and weird. So that's the other part. I think it's just been made too much of, like, also like how we have to traffic in reporting, right? How many times we hear sources are telling me X, and you're like, get the bleep. Like there's no chance anybody knows most of the time what is happening. Even like the Scheffers of the world, until they are told, the idea that that they're going to do something, get out of here. But people buy it because it's on the internet, because it's on the same level as everything else. And that part gets frustrating for sure, especially as somebody who's in it now with my own site trying to, build this up. And it's all fascinating. It's all interesting. Sometimes it's, frustrating, but it's the world we live in.
Yes, it is. Very much so. You on your Substack on Wednesday had an analysis piece of the Commanders signing Terry McLaurin to a contract extension. Headline, quote, Terry McLaurin's deal done, but it's really about Jayden Daniels in 2027, end quote. You in the piece highlight the extension as it relates to quarterback Jayden Daniels becoming contract extension eligible in the 2027 offseason. This is not an angle that a lot of people have explored. What can you tell us?
Sure. We've talked all along about Terry McLaurin. What's he going to get? DK Metcalf money, less Mike Evans money, somewhere in between, whatever. Okay, but and all that's fine, except that the APY or the AAV, the annual average value, it's what is said initially, and it is a number we all discuss. But honestly, that's where it's a lot of funny math in there. So as an example, Terry McLaurin gets it's announced 3 years value up to $96 million. The up to part is important. And then you start looking at the details. Okay, well, it's really, instead of it being a $32 million annual, it's like $29 million annual. Okay, but that assumes, like when we're hearing it, we're assuming, okay, it's 3 years times 29 equals how much he's going to get. Well, no, not exactly. If you look at the deal, there's no guaranteed money after 2026. We always hear about sometimes like, oh, player doesn't have any guaranteed money in the last year of his deal. Well, neither did Terry McLaurin this year. They weren't cutting him. That doesn't mean anything. Like, it only matters if you might get cut. He's not getting cut. But in this case, right? So you look at the deal, no guaranteed money after 2026. So what does that mean? It means that Washington could decide if at the end of 2026 that we would like to move on from the Terry McLaurin business. Now it would cost them in cap hit a little bit, sure, but that's part of business. But it wouldn't have to be paying him. And the key is that in 2027, or that after the 2026 season, is when Jayden Daniels becomes extension eligible. And we see this all the time. When do we see teams that get into salary cap problems? Is when they have an established roster with a lot guys making a lot of big contracts or just veteran contracts. And then when you insert in this like guy making $50 million or $60 million a year, or maybe in his case 70 or more, by that time, now you have to start cutting players. That leads to some other cap hits, other different types of problems. And to me, this is saying, it feels like Washington has been saying we understand where we are and that Jayden is coming, and we're not going to screw up that. So right now, along with Terry, they only have 3 other players who have big notable contracts through into 2027, and in 2 of those, in the case of Sam Cosmi and John Bates, they could cut them and essentially save money by doing it. They wouldn't take a big cap charge; they would actually be saving money. So they really have kept the books clean. Now they'll have to make some choices coming up here with some other deals, but the point is, I think they made this Terry McLaurin signing from the team perspective, almost not solely, but kind of solely to ensure that if they want to, they can move on from him and potentially any other big salaries. So when Jayden does sign a deal, that it is, it works around Jayden not having to jam Jayden into a crowded salary cap.
Are you at all surprised at how team-friendly the Terry McLaurin contract extension ended up being?
Well, yes and no. You would just like to think there's some middle ground, right? And that the middle ground would be just that it would be beneficial for all sides. But I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like we kept comparing it to the DK Metcalf deal, right? Okay, DK Metcalf was 4 years, 100-something million. But really, similar to what I just laid out with McLaurin, I think if you lay it out, it's really like 2 for $60. Like it can keep going, but 2 for $60, and then the team can kind of go from there. And the team always has the players over the barrel, as it were. And so I guess to that end, I'm not surprised. It's just that the fact that this went on as long as it did to land where it landed, I don't know why it took this long. Like, this deal is not like he got $44 million in guarantees. Yes, you and I would be very happy to get that. But DK Metcalf got 60. AJ Brown signing a very similar 3 for 96 got 84 million guaranteed. So the idea that Terry got all that less, we can debate whether who's worth what, but to have waited this long, to have kept him out of practices, to potentially have him not ready to have full snaps in week 1 because he hasn't been practicing, that just seems like a rough deal. So, I give the team credit for, I guess, staying firm with what they believe in, and hopefully it doesn't cost them in terms of Terry having some sort of a hamstring pull. But I'm surprised just because of the length, not because often these teams do end up being fairly team friendly.
Much more with Ben Standig in moments. The NACE Law Group, accident and injury lawyers. If you feel that you've been wronged, if you think that you've been wronged but aren't sure, contact the NACE Law Group, accident and injury lawyers, and mention that Al Galdi sent you. You could call 202-902-7611. You could also visit Washington, D.C., injurylawyers.com and submit for a free, no-obligation case review. The NACE Law Group, it features compassionate lawyers and zealous advocates for its clients. Led by the great Chris Nace and founded in 1979, the Nace Law Group is a Washington, D.C.-based family law firm that handles medical malpractice, personal injury, birth injury, legal malpractice, and consumer protection cases, offering aggressive advocacy for victims in Washington, D.C. and West Virginia. The Nace Law Group is outstanding. It will fight for you and your family. The Nace Law Group can help you and your family make difficult decisions. The Nace Law Group has recovered millions of dollars for the sick and injured. If you have a case, contact the Nace Law Group. Call 202-902-7611 or visit Washington, D.C., injurylawyers.com and tell the NACE Law Group that Al Galdi sent you. That's 202-902-7611 or Washington, D.C., injurylawyers.com, and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. The NACE Law Group, accident and injury lawyers. We're talking with Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standing on Substack. There, with the Terry McLaurin contract extension saga, has been so much reporting and conversation about which side was asking for what, and clearly there was a substantial gap. You, over multiple posts on X on Monday night, outlined the initial offer from the Commanders to McLaurin and the initial ask from McLaurin. For the record, what are those numbers?
Yeah, so from an AAV perspective, my sense is the Commanders were coming in at 25 million ish, something around that. I mean, it would be if the ish part would be on the lower end, but like 25 million basically, and that the McLaurin side was coming in north of 35, which would mean at a minimum make him over Justin Jefferson, the second highest paid receiver in the league. Now, that's at least at a minimum, like a $10 million annual gap. I think it was probably actually higher than that, just between, where the two sides were. So, again, we all understand it. If you're going to negotiate a contract, you don't come in with what you're willing to take. You come in with what, you'd like to get and go from there. And it just seems like ultimately the team just didn't. I don't know if the team budged that much. Again, I know that 25, if that's where they started, and saying that his AAV is 29 suggests that they maybe did budge, but the 44 million guaranteed again brings this deal to like a 2 for 44. So it's very, that the 2 for 44 does not match truly the 29 AAV. So the gap was pretty significant, and it seems like, and also I would say this, I don't know what you thought, but like watching it up close when, okay, he holds out, okay, then he turns into a hold in, okay, then he does the photo op with his agent 2 days in a row, standing in front of us so we would all see it, okay. And then a few days later, it's a trade request. And I know that Terry said yesterday that it was, or on a Wednesday, that it was sincere. I'm not doubting it, but it just felt like it was like going by the playbook. And when all that's began to happen, I was like, oh boy, his side is kind of grasping, it felt like, because, the team's doing nothing and they're just running through the book. The only thing left to do was sit out games. And obviously that's going to cost them like $1 million a week. So that never seemed reasonable. So yeah, it was a gap, and it feels like the team just kind of stood firm and waited for this thing to end.
The Commanders overwhelmingly had the leverage. Terry McLaurin and his agent, Buddy Baker, did what they could via the holdout and the hold-in and the request to be traded. I don't blame them for trying. But once the real numbers for the contract extension came out, the story that was told was the story that a lot of us anticipated. The Commanders, who did not have to sign McLaurin to a contract extension, were only going to do a team-friendly deal, and the deal is just that. Just $44.65 million fully guaranteed at signing. This is a pay-as-you-go, team-friendly 3-year contract extension.
When all this was going on, at some point I was like, okay, what happens if Terry says I'm going to play this thing out? Knowing the team could tag him, right? So he basically he's making $16 million this year if they had done nothing. And from what I saw on Over the Cap, the franchise tag for next year was 28. So therefore, if you take those 2 years, and I get it, it's not a guarantee the team would tag him next year. You know, who knows what happened. But, okay, if he has another good year, you think they would. That means $44 million is his floor for guaranteed money. And now that it's all said and done, he got $44 million guaranteed. He got an additional, like, $2.9 million guaranteed as part of this deal. He got the $30 million signing bonus up front, and he locks in the $28 million next year instead of having to wait the year and see, you know, does he get hurt or what happens. But he basically got the minimum he would have gotten if the team had just tagged him the next year. So that's another way to look at this. Like, it's not like, and by the way, the team now also has his rights through 2028. I mean, he could play. I mean, the contract could go all the way through. Last year's not going to happen no matter what. The money is the cap hits are too high. But like, it again. I'm not trying to like say Terry got screwed or hosed. Or it's good money. He's happy. That's fine. It's all that matters. But yeah, I mean, if he had done nothing, there are good chances he was going to get the $44 million guaranteed anyway.
And that's why what happened on Monday was comical. People, both fans and media members, treating the initially reported terms of the Terry McLaurin contract extension like gospel, not understanding that these terms were leaked by Buddy Baker to the media to make the extension look as good for McLaurin and Baker as possible. And we even had the confusion with what Buddy Baker leaked. We saw 3 years, $96 million. We saw 3 years worth over $96 million. We saw 3 years worth up to $96 million. Big difference between all three of those terms. You, by the way, got it right. 3 years worth up to $96 million. But the true, legitimate, non-Buddy Baker leak specifics of the extension came out on Wednesday morning, and they told a much different story.
And this is part of the horse trading that goes on at the insider level, and sometimes on the local reporter level as well. The agents, basically, the first day is for the agent. It's the day the agent gets his flowers. Wow, Terry McLaurin got paid. What a deal! And again, he got paid. Let's not question this. But relative to the notion of like who won the negotiation, no. I mean, you can't say he won based on those original numbers because those original numbers have a lot of funny math to it. And, you have to look further into it, and that's what happens. And, it's there are times when, like, if somebody says week one, the Giants are going to win by 30 points, you might be like, okay, come on, that's crazy. But things happen, whatever. Like, nothing is guaranteed in any direction there. In this case, anybody who's saying Terry, quote unquote, won does not understand at all what happened. Again, you don't have to say the team won. I'm just saying, but you can't say that he won. You either don't understand how this works, you just want to say he won, but you dug in your heels because you had a point, you thought he was going to win, and you looked at those numbers and say, I told you. No. No, you can't do that here. I think it's actually a pretty good litmus test for who generally to listen to, not just in this case, but like in general, when it comes to like we discussed earlier, the idea of which voices out there, are reasonable, rational, professional versus, oh my God, he got paid. Woo!
Yeah, there was a lot of that on Monday. The Commanders cut down to 53. Am I wrong in saying that this was one of the most uneventful, predictable, boring cut downs to 53 that Washington has ever had? And that's not a bad thing, but that did stand out. That once the team traded Brian Robinson, any major intrigue with the team's cut down to 53 was gone.
100%. Not just here, like league wide. Like I went like the day after, because I was immersed in Washington stuff. I was reading a story. I think it was on my old place, The Athletic. It was like, every beat writer, what's the most surprising cut? And half the answers were there was nothing surprising. And like even the ones that sort of claimed intrigue, it's like the Washington equivalent of keeping Eddie Goldman over Carl Davis or something. It wasn't like that dramatic, or like the undrafted free agent who had like for example, they just signed Donovan Edwards to the practice squad. I guess he led the Jets in rushing during the preseason, so some people thought he'd make the team. Like that type of stuff is what we're at. So yeah, for Washington, it was pretty boring. I've now said this in a couple different places, but like in my 53 projection, I got 51 out of 53. I'm not saying that to be like, oh, look at me. But the two that I got wrong were essentially on the defensive line because, and I said this all along, that like there's like 14 guys for 10 spots. They only kept 9, but like, sure, pick Eddie Goldman or Sheldon Day or Carl Davis or Jalen Holmes. Like, sure, pick 2. And, they even brought 2 of those guys who they cut back to the practice squad, which is kind of the whole same thing. It was a pretty boring deal. And it does make me sort of wonder, like, because there was like, I don't think it was a single controversial cut. Like, so it also makes you wonder, like, boy, what was the talent level really here in camp? Like, there was no extra corner who was even up for debate. At least that we know. There was none of the receivers were up for debate. Like, it was very cut and dry.
You have received a lot of praise, and justifiably so, for being the first person in the Washington, D.C. area media in recent months to bring up the possibility of Brian Robinson not being long for the Commanders. Sure enough, he's now gone. The 4 running backs on the team's initial 53-man roster for the 2025 season: Chris Rodriguez Jr., Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Austin Eckler, and Jeremy McNichols. Do you think that offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury is thinking running back by committee, or is eyeing one guy as a true RB1?
I think initially I'd have to go running back by committee. I did do the fantasy world of Salo the other day when I asked Dan Quinn if Chris Rodriguez would essentially replace Brian Robinson as the short yardage goal line guy. And he's like, blah, 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 but yeah, probably that'll be our first option. And that was like, okay, well, it just sort of clarifying that it wasn't going to be Krosky-Merritt, which, okay. So if I had to guess, my guess is like ultimately I think they really would like to see what Krosky-Merritt can do. But initially with Eckler in the, secured in the role that he has, and if Rodriguez is that, between the tackles, power guy, it feels like that could be sort of where this thing goes a little bit with Krosky-Merritt filling in. I don't know what to make of Jeremy McNichols exactly, but when Robinson and Eckler were playing, it wasn't like we saw McNichols a ton. Anyway, but do have those 3 plus Debo's going to get touches, plus the quarterback kind of runs a little bit. So I wouldn't feel great. Like if I was going to draft any of these guys in fantasy, I probably would be like, let me not have to put myself in a position where I have to use any of them in the first month. Let me see this play out. Again, if I had to pick one, I'd probably go for the upside of Bill, but yeah, I think it could be a committee, and I think from the perspective of the actual Washington team, that's okay. Let Cliff be Cliff. Let Cliff get in his bag. I think that was part of the thing. Like when you had Brian Robinson, you were limited into what you could do with him. One thing I thought was interesting, Al, going back to the Bengals game when Jayden ran for his touchdown, he said when he was discussing like what he was looking at, he said his first read was to go to a corner route to Chris Rodriguez. And I was like, really? A corner route to the running back who we never see in the passing game? Now, that doesn't mean anything necessarily, but it suggested to me that they think that Chris Rodriguez could be more a factor there. I'm not saying Brian Robinson never ran the same route, but that was the part of the issue. He just was not a factor in the passing game. And I think that just limited their options. We saw Bill, at least limited opportunities, looked comfortable catching the ball, and then not just catching it, making a move afterwards to get away from a defender. We know what Eckler can do. So yeah, I think they, with Cliff right now, I think he can keep the playbook open no matter who's on the field. I believe, assuming Rodriguez is somebody they do think can catch.
Assuming that all of them are healthy, are all 4 of these running backs going to be active for the Commanders on game days this coming regular season?
I would say yes. I need to, now that, funny, I don't know if you want to do it now, but now looking at, I haven't sat down with the 53 since it got down there to think to myself, okay, what are they going to do, right? Who are they going to lop off, right? If you told me they keep, say, Cahill or Medrano down, that's one. There's 9 defensive linemen. Pick one of those guys. One of the offensive linemen sits, that's 3. And then it starts getting interesting. Colson Yankoff is a pretty good special teams player. Are you sitting him? McNichols, I would imagine also, like, they would like his presence. He's a good pass blocker, probably the best one of the bunch. So in case they feel like they need that more, to do that, I would guess Josh Johnson is like an emergency. So I think they would keep 4, but the last spot, injuries aside, they may have to they may have to decide who can play, who's going to be helpful to them in way, especially on special teams.
Commanders insider Ben Standig of Last Man Standig on Substack. Read his work at lastmanstandig.substack.com. Continued success. Glad to see that things are going well.
But by the way, can I just say one more thing? You talked earlier about the independent aspect of the media. Like, you were, I don't want to make it out like you were a founding father, but like when you left 980 to do your own thing, I think a lot of us were like, oh, okay, well, how's this going to work? Because it's one thing to do a podcast, but it's another thing to say, hey, this is my career and I'm going to now do it over here. And, you killed it from day one. And I think that really did give myself and others inspiration. Like, oh, okay, there is a world out there where you can be away from an entity. And so kudos to you for, keeping this going. And you've obviously turned this into a big deal.
Well, I appreciate that very much. I had no idea what to expect. So you do the best that you can do. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
All right, Catering by Uptown. It provides catering to perfection, whatever event you're planning, especially a wedding. Visit cateringbyuptown.com. Mention that Al Galdi sent you and see what Catering by Uptown can do for you. Catering by Uptown provides both great service and a great price. Catering by Uptown is a family business. It is run by the Pereiras, who are great Commanders fans and loyal supporters of this podcast. Catering by Uptown specializes in handling everything so that you don't have to. Catering by Uptown understands that special events deserve to be celebrated in style and thus takes care of every detail so that you can enjoy your event. Great service, amazing cuisine, and reliability are the foundation of what makes Catering by Uptown one of the most referred caterers throughout Maryland, Washington, D.C., and Northern Virginia. And know this, if you visit cateringbyuptown.com and click on venues, you can set up your own personal tour of one of Catering by Uptown's premier venues, including outstanding waterfront venues. Catering by Uptown offers the ability to coordinate services at over 100 of the best reception halls, vineyards, farms, historic homes, event venues, banquet facilities, and wedding venues in the area. Visit cateringbyuptown.com and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. That's cateringbyuptown.com and make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. All right, time now to talk college football. Time now for GaldiLocks, my picks for the FBS teams of the Mid-Atlantic region. You surely have heard of GaldiLocks and the Three Bears. Well, this is GaldiLocks, which helps you, as the great Snoop Dogg once said, make money, money.
Make money, money, make money, money, money.
That's right, Snoop. Great to hear from you. We have arrived at week 1 of the 2025 college football season. A few things about GaldiLocks. These are picks only for games for the 7 FBS teams of the Mid-Atlantic region. Those 7 teams, Maryland, Navy, Virginia Tech, Virginia, James Madison, Old Dominion, and Liberty. I pick all of the games, not just the games that I especially like. And GaldiLocks for the 2024 season went 42-36-1. We call that profitable. I am going to do rapid-fire GaldiLocks for this week 1 of the 2025 season, and then I want to discuss the state of Maryland football. Maryland home to Florida Atlantic Saturday at noon. The Terrapins minus 14.5. Give me Maryland. Navy home to VMI Saturday at noon. The Midshipmen minus 41.5. Give me VMI. Virginia Tech versus number 13 South Carolina at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta Sunday afternoon at 3. The Hokies plus 7.5. Give me South Carolina. Virginia home to Coastal Carolina Saturday evening at 6. The Cavaliers minus 11.5. Give me Coastal Carolina. Old Dominion at number 20 Indiana Saturday afternoon at 2:30. The Monarchs plus 23.5. Give me Indiana. James Madison home to Weber State Saturday evening at 6. The Dukes minus 21.5. Give me James Madison. And Liberty home to Maine Saturday afternoon at 4. The Flames minus 25.5. Give me Maine. I'm going to talk a lot more about these teams on Monday's show, episode 1145, in discussing what happens in these games. And by the way, betting early season college football, good luck, man. You're flying blind. There is so much about college football teams that we do not know early in seasons. But regarding Maryland, so this is a big season for head coach Mike Locksley. This is his 7th season as Terps head coach. The Terps had a very disappointing 2024 season, 4-8 overall, including 1-8 in the Big Ten. Maryland, with Mike Locksley as head coach, is 0-17 in games against ranked Big Ten teams, and this does not include him going 0-2 against ranked Big Ten teams as Terps interim head coach in 2015. And Maryland has a new director of athletics. The school this past May 15th announced the hiring of James E. Smith as director of athletics. He had been serving as the senior vice president of business strategy for the Atlanta Braves. Mike Locksley, for the 2021 through 2023 seasons, did some good things. So the Terps had at least 7 wins in each of those seasons, marking the first time that the Terps had at least 7 wins in each of 3 consecutive seasons since the 2001 through 2003 seasons, which were Ralph Regan's first 3 seasons as Terps head coach. But last season was bad, and Locksley now has a new boss. And you gotta wonder if Mike Locksley is on the hot seat. He did a press conference this past Tuesday, but during that presser had this exchange between Gene Wong of the Washington Post and Locksley, and then you'll hear a follow-up exchange between Dave Preston of WTOP and Locksley.
What is success going to look like for you this year? How would you quantify it coming off 4-8 as opposed to 8-5 with a bowl win and with all new parts going into this season?
Yeah, I'll give you a good coaching axiom. Success is equal to production being greater than or equal to our expectation. And it's our expectation, not yours. And those are things we keep in-house. Our players know what our desires are. Our players know and understand what we have to do. Obviously, the goal is always to compete for Big Ten championships. We've created a foundation that I think will allow us to bounce back better because of the foundation to get back on track with competing to compete for Big Ten championships.
Mike, some might say that sunshine follows thunder. What gives you cause for confidence that this year's team will wash away the stain of 2024 and move forward?
Because I'm not worried about 2024. 2024 has no bearing. We're going to be defined in the present of what we do now. Every year, just like a play on offense, defense, and special teams, it dies. It doesn't come back. Unfortunately, I have to use that as a barometer for our team because it's where we were. But for us, 2024 will have zero bearing on 2025.
Yeah, you would think that Mike Locksley needs to have a good season to keep his job. A big determining factor in how the Terps season goes, of course, will be the quarterback play. The Terps have had a 3-way quarterback competition. UCLA transfer Justin Martin, redshirt freshman Christian Martin, no relation to Justin Martin, and true freshman Malik Washington. He is who I hope is the Terps QB1. Malik Washington, 6'5" dual-threat prospect, consensus 4-star recruit, a product of Archbishop Spalding High School in Severn, Maryland. We, during Mike Locksley's press conference on Tuesday, had this back and forth.
So just the quarterbacks, with each of them, what has impressed you most about each one? Maybe like a real quick thing about each
Justin, one. Athleticism, big arm. I would say Christian, his ability to process information and make he makes bad plays good because he's a big physical guy, and then Malik's maturity and the calmness that he brings kind of has the aura, and they all three those are the things that stand out to them as you just kind of say that. And I think all three of those guys have the ability to execute our system. And to me, that's more important than any of those characteristics. And, I'm looking forward to seeing the guy trot out there and try to get it done.
And when you have three guys like that, what goes into deciding which one is going to start, and what's the process like for you with that?
The guy that gives us the best chance to win and the guy that gives us the best chance to score points.
Have you decided yet?
I have.
But you'll tell us on...
You'll see when it trots out there with the first play of the game. We've been down this road before.
I'm just checking just in case.
You guys all know it's not going to happen. The team knows, they know. It's in-house. We're moving forward. You guys will get a chance to see it. And there's no need to give FAU any advantages to who to prepare for or what to prepare for.
All right, Mike Locksley not announcing a starting quarterback. The Terps have 3 new coordinators, a new offensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator, and a new special teams coordinator. Pep Hamilton is the new offensive coordinator / quarterbacks coach. I'm excited for this. Pep Hamilton was the Los Angeles Chargers quarterbacks coach for the 2020 season, which was Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert's great rookie season. Hamilton was the Indianapolis Colts' offensive coordinator from January 2013 to November 2015. Working with Andrew Luck during his time as the Colts QB1. And Hamilton has big-time local ties. He was a quarterback at Howard University for the 1993 through 1996 seasons, and he was the head coach and general manager for the XFL's DC Defenders for the 2020 season. Well, football season is here, and the best daily fantasy is on Prize Picks, which is offering free cash to listeners of the Al Galdi podcast. Download the Prize Picks app and use the promo code GALDI, my last name, GALDI. You do that, you get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. $50 in lineups when you play just $5. Wherever you are in the DMV, Prize Picks has something for you. Prize Picks Streak is available in Maryland. Prize Picks Pick'em is available in Virginia, and the Prize Picks Real Money Game is available in Washington, D.C. Prize Picks makes daily fantasy simple and fun. It's based on picking more or less on the day's top player projections. You choose from dozens of player projections. Prize Picks is outstanding for both pro and college football. This weekend, Labor Day weekend, have season openers for all 7 of the FBS teams of the Mid-Atlantic region: Maryland, Navy, Virginia Tech, Virginia, James Madison, Old Dominion, and Liberty, to say nothing of so many other teams in action. Prize Picks is awesome. I've used it. It's a ton of fun. It is easy to use. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your opinions into real money. Prize Picks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. And take advantage of what Prize Picks is offering to listeners of the Al Galdi podcast. Download the Prize Picks app and use the promo code GALDI, my last name, GALDI. You do that, you get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Using that promo code helps out this podcast a lot and gets you free money. Prize Picks. Run your game. The Orioles just concluded a horrendous homestand, 1-7 over 8 games against the American League West leading Houston Astros and the Boston Red Sox. So 2 good teams, yes, but still 1-7. Thursday afternoon, a 3-2 loss to the Red Sox at Oriole Park at Camden Yards to complete a 4-game sweep, during which the O's totaled just 7 runs. The O's in MLB's 2025 regular season now are 60-74, worst record in the American League East, second worst record in the American League. The O's on Thursday afternoon scored just 2 runs, totaled 9 hits, but worked just 2 walks and went just 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position. The 9 hits were a home run, 3 doubles, and 5 singles. The O's got dominated by Red Sox ace Garrett Crochet. He allowed 2 runs in 6 innings with 7 strikeouts versus no walks. The Orioles homer was by Alex Jackson. He is the Orioles starting catcher and number 9 batter, went 1 for 3 with a solo homer and a hit by pitch. The O's acquired Jackson via trade with the New York Yankees on July 6th. Jackson, over 65 plate appearances with the O's, has a slugging percentage of .567. He has been good. But the Orioles' overall offense in this series, not good. The Orioles pitching in this 3-2 loss to the Red Sox on Thursday afternoon was very good. Cade Povich was the Orioles starting pitcher. He allowed 2 runs in 5 innings with 5 strikeouts versus no walks. He did give up 7 hits, which were 2 home runs, a double, and 4 singles, but he threw a lot of strikes, 81 pitches, 56 strikes, just 25 balls, and 3 Orioles relievers combined to allow 1 run in 4 innings. Cade Stroud tossed 2 perfect innings with 2 strikeouts. Rico Garcia allowed 1 run in 1 inning, and Sean Dubin in his Orioles debut tossed a perfect top of the 9th. The O's on Tuesday afternoon announced having claimed Dubin off waivers from the Houston Astros. Also, the O's on Thursday morning announced having designated reliever Roansy Contreras for assignment. Next up for the O's is a 6-game road trip in California, beginning with a 3-game series at the San Francisco Giants. Game 1 Friday night at 10:15. Dean Kramer will be the Orioles starting pitcher. Game 2 Saturday night at 7:15. Trevor Rogers will be the Orioles starting pitcher. Game 3 Sunday afternoon at 4:05. Tomoyuki Sagano will be the Orioles starting pitcher. And that'll do it for you and me for now. Keep the feedback coming. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Monday show, episode 1145. We'll have a lot for you on the Commanders. Also on Monday's show, I'll talk college football, Nationals, and Orioles. We this weekend, Labor Day weekend, have season openers for all 7 of the FBS teams of the Mid-Atlantic region. The Nats this weekend have a 3-game series against the Tampa Bay Rays at Nationals Park. The O's this weekend have a 3-game series at the San Francisco Giants. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you on Monday.
How about them Cowboys?